Thanks for joining in on part 2 of It's Not Easy, where we're taking a look at why some of the texts of the Bible are so difficult to read and understand. Last time we talked about how the Bible uses only words to present many different kinds of information that we would be more comfortable seeing in other ways, like a map or a blueprint. Now we're ready to take a deeper dive into each of these images and explore why the words behind them are so important. In fact, I would say that the texts which these images represent point to the 4 cornerstones of ancient Israelite identity. They all begin with the letter T, so hopefully that'll help you to remember them. And with that, let's launch into the first T of Israelite identity. Let's begin with the family tree to talk about tribe. Recall that Matthew 1, verses 1 to 6 was the text behind this graphic. This listing of fathers to sons throughout the generations is called a genealogy. Genealogies listed the family group that you belong to. This was vital information for these people because their tribe was part of what made them unique. Here's what I mean. The Bible starts out in Genesis with a description of how all of creation comes into being from an ancient perspective. It's on a cosmic scale. But 11 chapters into Genesis, the Bible's more universal story starts to narrow, coming to rest on just one individual whose name is Abram, later Abraham. After the flood of Noah, it seems that God has been on the move, looking for an individual who just might be open to partnering with him to do something entirely new. In chapter 12, God calls out to Abram, who lives in Ur, which we would locate in present-day Iraq, and says, "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land that I will show you." In short, I want you to cut ties with your former tribe and the gods that they worship and the land that they live on, and follow me into the great unknown. Mind you, as far as we know in this story, Abram has no idea who this God is that has just called out to him. So it's pretty remarkable that he packs up his life and agrees to follow this unfamiliar God to only God knows where. He's given a promise, though, which is really an attractive idea to Abram because Sarai, his wife, is barren. God tells him, "I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing, and all of the peoples on the earth will be blessed through you." And though it doesn't happen right away, Abraham and his wife Sarah eventually begin the family line. Abraham has Isaac, Isaac has Jacob, and Jacob has 12 sons, each of whom generate their own family lines. These 12 family groups are the 12 tribes of Israel. Genealogies like the one we find in Matthew are really important to the Bible's people because it mattered which tribe you belong to. Let's take Levi's tribe. Because Levi's tribe acted on God's behalf after the Israelites worshiped that golden calf back in Moses' time, the Levites are set apart for religious duties. And only specific Levites, the sons of Moses' brother Aaron, can be priests. As a matter of fact, the book, which outlines all the priestly duties for the ancient Israelite worship, is called Leviticus, after the tribe of Levi, which is the only tribe that the priests could come from. And if you want to be a real king, you need to be from the tribe of Judah. Why is that? In Genesis 49, Jacob gives his blessing to his 12 sons right before his death and says this of Judah: "The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nation shall be his." All these words basically say that Judah is the kingly line, like Levi is the priestly line. David, the iconic Israelite king, was from Judah's tribe. The Messiah had to be from Judah's tribe. This brings us to Matthew 1. Understand that the author of Matthew's gospel was a Jew, and his audience was primarily Jewish. The same thing isn't true about, let's say, Luke's gospel. So if Matthew's trying to persuade his Jewish hearers that Jesus is their Messiah, the first question out of the gate they're going to have is he from Judah's tribe? Notice how Matthew 1 starts. This is the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And then he proceeds to lay out how Abraham is the father of Isaac, who's the father of Jacob, father of Judah, and on down to David, and finally down to Joseph and Mary. Okay, Matthew's hearer says, that box has been checked, and you may proceed. Another interesting facet of Matthew's genealogy is that it's split into 3 sections: Abraham to David, David to the exile in Babylon, and the exile to Jesus. We'll talk more about the exile, but for now just know that it happened about 580 years before Jesus, when the Babylonian nation destroyed the Israelite nation and carted everyone of value back to Babylon. Hugely traumatic, national tragedy of epic proportions. So it's a reference point everyone would know, kind of like 9/11, except for your entire country is destroyed and all your buildings of religious and political significance are razed to the ground. That's the exile. So Matthew ends his genealogy in verse 17 by saying, thus there were 14 generations in all from Abraham to David, 14 from David to the exile in Babylon, and 14 from the exile to Jesus. Okay, so what? What's with the 14? Many scholars, and we're not quite sure, but many scholars think that Matthew is using a facet of Hebrew numbering here. Let me explain. Remember that Matthew is written primarily to Jews. In their minds, the Messiah is supposed to be a new David, a king on the order of David, their iconic favored son. So Matthew wants to link Jesus the Messiah to David. So Abraham 14 to David, David 14 to exile, exile 14 to Jesus. The 14s link these chains. In biblical Hebrew, there are no numbers. Instead, each letter is assigned a numerical value. This coding system is called gematria. So the letters themselves act as numbers. Let me show you. What would be our A corresponds to their Aleph. It looks like an X up there. And since that's the first letter of their alphabet, it corresponds to the numerical value of 1. In the same way, B equals Beit, which equals 2. C is Gimel, which is 3. Our D is their Dalet, which is 4. Our H is their He, which is 5. Our V is Vav, which is 6. Those are the 6 first letters of the Hebrew alphabet. In Hebrew, the vowels aren't written, so that David, the character we're trying to link back to, is D, V, D. Dalet, Vav, Dalet, or its numerical value, 4 plus 6 plus 4, which equals 14. Matthew's genealogy begins with Abraham and ends with Jesus and rings out David, 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 David to its Jewish audience, further giving credibility to Jesus as the Messiah, the promised son of David. There's actually a second genealogy for Jesus found in Luke chapter 3, verses 23 to 37. It's a little different than Matthew's. Notice how Luke's genealogy starts with Jesus and works its way back in time, whereas Matthew started with Abraham and worked its way forward to Jesus. Luke's genealogy also goes farther back than Matthew's. Here's Abraham, but Luke continues all the way back, look at that, to Adam, the first human being according to Genesis. Why would Luke feel the need to give us more information than Matthew? It's because Luke is speaking to a different audience than Matthew. Matthew was writing primarily for Jews, and they identified with the tribe of Abraham. People outside that tribe were Gentiles or non-Jews. They were outsiders. Luke, on the other hand, is writing primarily to Gentiles, telling them the unexpected good news that Jesus, the Jewish Messiah, was actually sent by God for them as well. So it's not just a Jewish thing. Jesus has universal, all of humanity type of relevance. And where do we all come from, according to Genesis? From Adam, the first human being. That's why Luke goes back to Adam, to say that all of you non-Jewish Gentiles, well, you're included in this too. So sometimes genealogies are all about the names, and sometimes, actually a lot of times, there's a lot more going on. Either way, the first T of tribe is a critical cornerstone of Israelite identity, and we'll pick it up the next time with the second T. So thanks for coming along on this short journey into the Bible text. I hope you've noticed something new in the landscape, or maybe even a fresh way to view territory that you've covered many times before. Whatever the case, it's good to have you along for the trip. You never know what we might discover as we crack open this fascinating text together.